Hello and welcome back to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. In the aftermath of the Wallabies versus Australia result last night, it is a bit of chaos in the Australian camp and a lot of stories coming out, a lot of pundits coming out, a lot of pressure on Eddie Jones for a lot of different reasons, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. We've had a bit of an update from Will Skelton this morning. The Australian captain is currently not playing, didn't play last night, but was put ahead of the media this morning in their Matchday +1 press conference. So before I talk about exactly what the situation is, what Eddie Jones has said, what he hasn't said, and the reason there's so much sort of turmoil, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. So last night, Wales hammering Australia, 40 points to 6. It was a bit of an embarrassing result. A lot of defeated Australian fans last night, just very disappointed and a little bit lost for words as to what the situation is. There was a lot of talk, there's a lot of surprise really when Dave Rennie was shown the door and they brought in Eddie Jones earlier this year. Eddie Jones then basically leaving behind the entire sort of Dave Rennie project, tearing it all up, starting again, bringing a side of lots of unknown players, very young side, and leaving behind so many top players. Australia basically all but crashed out of the World Cup, and Eddie Jones now had to face the media last night where he apologised and took full responsibility, said that he is the reason they lost and that he has tried to rip up the squad. He is basically almost sort of admitting that the squad he has was never going to compete because they're so young, but that it's a squad for the future, and that if they just stick to their guns and if they keep backing them, basically they can become world-class players and they can become players who can go on to potentially, he wants them to win the 2027 World Cup. There's also 2025 British and Irish Lions Series that is on the rise. Now, what was very interesting and a massive sort of sideshow is the allegation that Eddie Jones has had an interview with Japan Rugby to become the head coach of Japan once again following the end of the World Cup. This was addressed this morning, it was put to Will Skelton this morning about whether this is the case. Eddie Jones basically denying that he's leaving and saying that he's fully committed to Australian rugby and taking quite a lot of exception to the implications that he was considering leaving and that he might be on the way out, and basically sort of accusing people of being disrespectful by even alleging that he is not committed to the Australian cause. So he very much sort of denying that is the case. Will Skelton saying that he hasn't spoken to Eddie personally, that they haven't had that conversation, but that he denied in the press conference, and that is pretty much good enough for him. A lot of pressure now coming from the fans. I don't know what the player sort of feelings is. Will Skelton basically making it seem as if Eddie Jones has the backing of his squad, but there is a lot of pressure for a lot of change within Australia Rugby. Now, does that change start with Eddie Jones being removed, Eddie Jones being released? Has this been a failed experiment? Or do Rugby Australia sort of stick to their guns and say, no, we trust Eddie Jones as the man for the job, we trust him to be able to turn things around, and it's all about giving him the chance, giving him license to be able to basically get to the 2027 World Cup. So it's going to be an interesting sort of time. I mean, personally, I think that Eddie Jones made a very bold call and slightly irresponsible call, I think, to leave a lot of those players behind. It is an interesting thing to see whether that call will be vindicated. If he does stay in the position, and for example, Australia do win the 2027 World Cup, which is at home, and they do win the 2025 British and Irish Lions Series, they can look back at this as the watershed moment where it was a disaster World Cup, but a short-term pain, long-term game. I do think that bringing in Michael Hooper, a Craig Cooper, looking at some other players, a Bernard Foley, for example, a lot of players who were left behind, this Australian team performs better in this World Cup. However, Eddie Jones is basically arguing that this is a necessary evil in terms for the long term to be able to compete, which I think a lot of people are not quite buying into just yet. So the question is, will he survive? Time will tell. They've still got one more game. Mathematically, it is still possible for them to make the quarterfinals. Wales have made it, but Fiji are yet to officially qualify, so Australia can mathematically still make the quarterfinals, but it would take a bit of a miracle for that to actually happen. Let me know what you think. Does Eddie Jones stay? Should he go? I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. We are in Lyon for the week. We are going to be covering the All Blacks, Italy, Namibia, as well as Uruguay. So a lot of content from those teams coming up before we move our way back to the South African camp over the weekend. So yeah, let me know if you are from any of those teams and what you think of the games to come. And we will see you guys during the week across Lyon, bringing you guys updates from on the ground.